Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Valindasari with NPM 234111103 from class MNJ 23A. On this occasion I will explain from the population and sample. In a scientific research activity, both in quantitative and qualitative approaches, understanding the concept of population and sample is a very basic part, because it is directly related to the validity and generalization of research results. In general, population in the context of research methodology is defined as all subjects or objects that have certain characteristics and are the main targets in research, so that the population can be individuals, groups, events, documents, or other entities that are relevant to the formulation of the problem and the objectives of the research that have been set. Thus, population is a collection of elements or units of analysis where researchers will draw conclusions or scientific generalizations, both in the form of large and small populations, as long as they meet the criteria set by the researcher. In research methodology, the concept of population is generally divided into two categories, namely the target population and the accessible population. The target population refers to the entire group of individuals or elements that are conceptually the focus of the research, serving as the basis for generalizing the research findings. In contrast, the accessible population represents the portion of the target population that the researcher can practically reach and study, considering limitations such as time, cost, and other available resources. For instance, if a researcher aims to examine the perceptions of millennial farmers throughout Indonesia toward digital agricultural technology, the target population includes all millennial farmers across Indonesia. However, due to logistical constraints, the accessible population might be limited to millennial farmers in 3 purposefully selected provinces. Since it is often impractical for researchers to study every member of a population, a process called sampling is typically employed. Sampling involves selecting a portion of the population to serve as representative subjects of observation. In other words, a sample is a subset of the population that is chosen using specific procedures and serves as the basis for drawing conclusions about the entire population. The use of a sample allows research to be conducted more efficiently in terms of time, cost, and effort, provided that the sampling procedure is applied correctly and systematically. A good sample must meet the criterion of representativeness, meaning it should accurately reflect the key characteristics of the population it represents so that the findings can be appropriately generalized. Moreover, the sample size must be sufficiently large to minimize the risk of statistical errors, and the selection must be conducted objectively using methods suitable for the research type and the nature of the population. Choosing the appropriate sampling technique is critical, as it determines the extent to which the data collected can be considered trustworthy in representing the actual conditions of the population. Sampling techniques are generally classified into 2 major categories: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling refers to methods in which each member of the population has an equal and measurable chance of being selected as a sample member. Some common forms of probability sampling include simple random sampling, where samples are selected at random without regard to population structure; stratified random sampling, where the population is divided into homogeneous subgroups strata, based on specific characteristics, and samples are drawn proportionally from each stratum; cluster sampling, where the population is divided into clusters and several clusters are randomly selected for study; and systematic sampling, where samples are chosen at fixed intervals from an ordered list of the population.